Hello, welcome to IT Security and Privacy with your host, Dr. Ayo Adenuga. Today we want to look at IT controls. IT control is what we're going to be talking about today. And let's first define what IT controls mean. Well, I would define it as meeting information technology related business objectives of reasonable assurance and regulatory compliance through the implementation of strategic plans, systems, and personnel coordination, testing, and monitoring activities. If we look back into this definition, we see that the focus is to provide assurance, a reasonable assurance, that the business objective set for IT is met. Also, that IT is operating within the confine of regulatory compliance. IT is not operating outside of the compliance status. So, and that can only be achieved through the implementation of strategic plans, systems and personnel coordination. So, the coordination of the systems, coordination of personnel. All these need to work together, synergize in such a way that the business operations are carried out within the regulatory confine, and there is a reasonable assurance provided that the business data is secure. And how can that be achieved? There has to be regular testing. Even if you set it up, you set your environment, IT environment up, and everything looks good and certified, you discover that in the course of business operations, there are so many things that could change along the line. That is the essence of testing, regular testing. And when testing discover gaps, those gaps need to be remediated. And when the gaps are remediated, there has to be continuous monitoring to ensure that the gaps remediated remains remediated. And in the process of remediating the gap, another gap is not created. So let's move on. Now, what is the focus of IT control? IT control focuses on people, technology assets, and data. But while we talk about people and technology assets, the central focus or the core focus is actually the data, because the technology control wants to ensure that business data is kept secure and is available and is not compromised at any point in time. So let's look at people. IT control seeks to regulate IT assets usage in such a manner that users' utilization of IT assets complies with the established business policies, processes, and procedures. So for people to be regulated or to be controlled in such a way that the operations, the activities of the people, or let's use users now, users of technology, to ensure that the activities of the users of technology does not compromise the integrity of the data, the confidentiality, and the availability of the data. There has to be policies in place, processes have to be established, and the processes must be followed. And the procedures has to also be documented. So that is about people. So I think we should rather put it people slash users. You can use the word people or you can use the word users. Now let's look at the next one, which is technology assets. Technology assets can be classified into two, and we'll see it along our discussion. So IT control focuses on security assurance on configuration and usage of IT assets. So the security assurance is actually focused on how do we configure the assets and how do we use the assets in such a way that it will not be outside of the established processes or procedures, and also that it will continue to be in line with business in achieving the business objective. Remember that organizations spend a lot set aside IT budgets, and IT budgets must, at the end of the year, bring back what we refer to as return on investment for IT. And one of the ways to ensure that return on investment is achieved is to make sure that there is proper configuration of the assets and the usage of the IT assets are controlled. So technology assets, we classified it into two. We have the devices, technology devices. Examples are computers, routers, switches, firewall devices, and some other IT devices. We're talking about hardwares here. Then another one is the application or the software. We're talking about databases, you're talking about firewall, antiviruses, and load balancers and stuff like that. So that is talking about the technology assets. How are these configured? How are the devices configured? Where are they stored? Are they secured, physically secured? And is there any protective devices that have been set in place to make sure that access to these devices are controlled? Who has the asset, who has control over this, or who has access to these devices? Similarly, applications. The applications must be controlled in such a way that only authorized users must have access to those applications, and not only users as in people. We're talking about users as devices too. When we're talking about users in technology, in information technology, we have two types. You have devices and you have people. So if you go into your Active Directory in a server side of what do you call it, of Windows Server, you discover that you have the people. People can be listed as users. Devices can be listed as users. So that is about that. Let's move on to the third focus of IT control, which is actually the core and the essence of the first two, and that is data. IT control ensures that data are received in line with business objectives, best practices, and are stored securely, made available for business use. So we're talking here about the data confidentiality, the data integrity, and data availability. That's the focus of IT control when it comes to data. So looking at receiving data in line with business objectives, each business or each line of business has reasons why certain data will be required, probably from customers or from partners, business partners, and the reasons why these data are received must be in line with the business objective. And not only that, non relevant or irrelevant data should be discouraged from being taken from customers and business partners, because if you don't need the data, you really don't need to collect it. You only collect data when you need it, and when data is collected from customers or business partners, you become the custodian, or your organization become the custodian of that information, and your organization becomes liable if that information is accessed by a wrong person. So you have to ensure the data confidentiality, talking about securing the data and talking about the integrity, to make sure that the data that is stored remains the way it is stored in its original form. It is not compromised in any way, either by external force or internal force. It could be, we have an internal hackers, we have external ones. So we want to make sure that the data received from the clients remain in its original form. And availability, that means that the data must be made available when the business need the data for its operation. So there's no need to store a data or to store data rather, if the data will not be available for business usage. So that is talking about the IT control focus. Remember, we said it's about people, technology, assets, and data. So let's move on. Now, what are the attributes of IT controls? IT controls are focused on assurance of the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of business data. We've just explained that. These controls are purely internally managed, though they may be influenced by external regulations and activities. But when we're talking about IT controls are internally managed. That is not to say that it cannot be sourced to another company. We still regard it as internally managed, because if you source it out, you are still in control. What we mean by internally managed is that your business or your organization is responsible and is liable for managing this data. Whether you source it out to another organization, whether you probably, let's take for example, in a situation where you use a cloud vendor and the data is stored in the cloud. Even if there is data breach, your organization is liable. The only thing that can happen is that your organization can sue the vendor, the cloud vendor, but you are still liable as far as privacy issue is concerned. Then effective IT controls combine information security and risk management efforts into the information system lifecycle. So right from the development stage up to the time that a particular information system is retired, it is the responsibility of the organization to ensure that IT control combine information security and risk management. You think about risk along as you are looking at the benefits of running your business, especially in the area of IT, with the present what they call a data breach landscape. You see, the horizon is widening every day. The whole IT controls can be classified into systems that is automated, or controls that are operational, that is the ones that are managed by humans. So if it is managed by humans, it's regarded to as operational controls. Here, under operational controls, you're talking about management oversight, you're talking about testing, you're talking about monitoring to ensure that what IT IT personnel are supposed to do, they are actually doing it. That is talking about the operational controls. This is different from the system controls. System controls are controls that have been set in place, like authentication, use of encryption, use of password, and system based controls like that. So these are few of attributes of IT controls. Let's move on to the next one. Now let's look at the components of IT controls. We want to look at control activities and control environment. I think I will start on the right side. On my right here, I will look at the control environment first. Talking about the control environments, we're talking about enterprise security, vision, and mission. What is the vision and mission of the enterprise for setting up these ID controls, or even in the first place of having or of adopting information technology in their business? That objective will drive the vision and the mission of IT, of the security of IT assets and data. So it is that same security vision that will lead to drawing policies around the objectives and how the technology should be managed. So these policies are in most cases written, they are documented, stored, and managed in the standardized, that's the word I was trying to, in a standardized environment. So it's not an environment where somebody can just go in there and change the policy. There has to be rules and procedures to changing policies. Then procedures. The procedures also have to be documented. How should this line of technology operation be carried out? The procedure should be stated, and the processes to be well written and documented. The processes also need to be evaluated from time to time to be sure that the processes are still relevant to the operation and the objective of the enterprise IT and security visions. Then control requirements. What are the requirements for control? This also have to be documented. So that is about that. That's talking about the control environment. Now let's look at the control activities. The control activities we look at asset inventory. Asset inventory means that every asset the organization will have or has must be documented, and to achieve this, the organization must have policy around how it purchases its inventory. It must have policies around that. Who will be the supplier and who can purchase on behalf of the organization. Not everyone should have the privilege to go, not all managers should have privilege to go and purchase or submit purchase order. there has to be a department. Every device or application, whether even when it is maybe let's say application that will be developed, the software that will be developed in-house or over-the-shelf software, it has to be managed by a department. And this department will have a standardized way of documenting every device that is purchased, and there has to be a database that manages how the assets are purchased, when they are in use, and if they are retired, what happens to them when they are retired. So we need to, that is area of asset inventory, because if you don't know how many devices you have, you don't know, definitely you cannot control your environment. So the first thing is that you must have good asset inventory in place. When that is done, then you have to do data mapping. The data that is received from different endpoints, where do they go? You need to know. And when you know how your data flow, that is where you will know, probably know, what are the possible failure points. And once you know your failure points, then you'll be in best position to set controls in place. So the issue of the asset inventory, data mapping, you see, it comes also under business process management. And it will help a lot if organizations have a very efficient business process management in place. Okay, identification activities. We're talking about events monitoring. So this is not talking about, this is like, let me say, when your analysts monitors the server events, they monitor who logs in, who logs out, at what time, and what system is connected to the server. And you have logs that is pulled from time to time and is screened to see if there is any unusual event. In such situation, activities are identified, whether they are in line with the business rules or there is anything that that flags the attention and should raise alarm. These are done both manually and by automation. You have logs and the alerts set in place so that you can review from time to time. Then we have a risk assessment. Risk assessments are in different forms, but we'll talk under IT controls. We're looking at process design. We're looking at about performance effectiveness of the processes that are in place. And not only that, how are the assets secured? Then we move on to leadership monitoring activities. Leadership monitoring activities and the risk assessments with process design and performance activities. These two fall under operational controls. Falls under operational controls. So, but I decide to bring them up here because as an IT professional, you need to know that when you design your environment and you design your operations, it has to be designed in such a way that it will perform. And you have to be able to do self-assessments of these systems and make sure that they are secure, they will achieve the business purpose. So let's move on. I think after this, I will just say thank you for your time at IT Security and Controls with Dr. Ayo Adenuga. At this point, I want to encourage you to please subscribe, press the subscription button, and also the notification icon, press the bell so that when we release new video, you'll be notified. Thank you.